Well, welcome here to New Directions Real Estate. We're in the basement, and we've got speaker number 1 of 3 today here for Syttende with the Norwegian Heritage. And with me is Arno. And Arno, thanks for taking the time out here just prior to your presentation. Tell us what you have here.
Well, it's a presentation on Scandinavian Nisse. And I've got it, my wife is 5/8 Norwegian, and I'm financial secretary of our Venland Folk Lodge. Okay. So since she's president, I got voted in to do this. And I found fascination with a lot of the things from Scandinavia, and this was one of them. These little characters, and they're cute, and you see them everywhere, and people are, making little Nisse and selling them and all this kind of stuff, and they're neat. And there's a real fascination with that. And so this kind of traces the history of where it came from, and some of the different types, some of the misnomers about what they are and aren't. And then to modern day, like we still have, in America, we still have this little guy, the elf on the shelf idea, and that comes from the Nisse idea. So,
wow. How many years have you been studying this and preparing and actually presenting, would you say?
I started probably in about 2008. I taught school for 38 years, and so after that, I had to do something else to stay out of trouble, and so I started doing. And I had done a lot of PowerPoint, a lot of computer things, and so I started preparing all different kinds of stuff, World War II things, and that's kind of where I started. And then I branched out into other things.
So how many presentations will you do in a year?
Probably about 10 or 12, something like that.
Yeah, enough to keep you busy.
Enough to keep me busy. Our lodge just had me do, 2 of them this year.
Wow.
And so, and they're fun, and they're neat.
Yeah. Well, we really look forward to the presentation today. Thank you for taking the time out. I kind of sprung this one on you, but like a trooper, you came through with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Arno here with the presentation coming up, so stay tuned. We'll have it up after we take a look at all of our wonderful sponsors.
Well, good morning, folks. It is 11:29, and I figure it's about time we, start getting this under tow. So I'll greet you and tell you my name is Arno Morton, which you've already read on the program. And I taught school for, 38 years, if you count my subbing, which I did for 3 years after that. But anyhow, none of that prepared me to do this. It truly didn't. It did help me make PowerPoints, and it did help me, to be able to speak in front of thousands and thousands of people. But other than that, it didn't. And I'm going to sit down through this whole presentation because all that walking around on hard floors has wrecked my back, and I've got spinal stenosis, and it's like crazy. So I'm going to sit. But what got me going, I married a Norwegian.
So did I.
Excuse me?
So did I.
Yeah.
I have manspoiled.
I married a Norwegian lady many, many years, almost 49 years ago. My wife Sue. And she's 5/8 Norwegian. I'm not any. A friend of ours in our lodge at home said that I'm a wannabe, which probably is true. But there's a good chance, having over 50% English in my background from both sides, that there might be a little Danish in there from Rollo, who went and spread goodwill all over the British Isles. So there's a good, and especially with a name like Morton, there's a chance. But anyway, moving on.
Arno, before we start, if I could just interject a minute here. Is that okay, Dave?
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, we'd like to, meaning the History Alive Project Organization, we are a 501c3 group that started, we're the new guys on the block. We are not your grandma's historical society. We take our history and we chew it up and we enjoy it and we share it with our ninth graders, with our classes that we do at the high school. And we also like to do, as our mission statement says, out-of-the-box experiences for people of all ages, because history shouldn't be put in a box and put on a shelf. It should be brought out, should be taught, and should be enjoyed. So our program today involves the cultural portions, so you can go and get hub fries, you can go see the tractor pull. We surely are enjoying the unads in the community. However, we really need to take a look as why is there this thing in this community and not perhaps 7 miles down the road. And when we interviewed a couple ninth graders a long time ago, they had no idea what the word Sitnamai meant. They didn't know it was 2 words or 1 word. And they had no idea, but somebody said, my grandma makes lovesome. And we thought, that's enough of a hook. There's got to be, and that means that there were oodles of people in this community, and not that we were the savior of all their culture, but we went home that Sunday after church and said, this has got to change. So we approached 2 history teachers, 9th grade history teachers at the high school. We said we'd like to pitch a 1-hour program close to Sitnamai so that our kids know what's going on. The program has grown to 5 classes, 90 minutes each, every month of the year, fully endorsed by our school board. They love us because we don't charge them a thing. They thought it was the most wonderful program ever, in fact. And doing programs, and so we're the new, as we said, we're the new kids on the block. We're using the facility today, and just a couple housekeeping chores. We have bathrooms over here to your left. And you're surely welcome to stay for the other programs we have. Arno will be doing 1 of 2 today. And then we have our Civil War expert talking with the whole regiment, and Colonel Haig coming up. To have a little perk for you, we have a couple things in our treasure box, and I'd like to share them with you. First of all, if you take a look over here, everybody has to have a gimmick, right? So we do. Our treasure box holds 4, trolls and the things that Mr. Martin's going to talk to us about, troll munchies, okay, endorsed by the American Dental Association, guaranteed to have you an appointment sometime next week, okay? And should you stay for Mr. Glumsted's presentation, let's get this right, Mr. Glonstedt's presentation, because he will be concentrating on that period in our nation's history having to do with the Civil War. Civil War had some heart attack stuff that they made frequently. We made some too for you. And if you don't get your dentist on this one, he surely will have you come back to sample a few of these. This doesn't, you know the story, and we'll also perhaps Dave will expand a little bit on that. Then should you stay even for gold getting out of Norway, right in the World War, when the Nazis had occupied, well, of course, we have to have gold. And for those of you that stay and want to have a little gold stash, we have that for you. And those are our 3 sets of munchies that will be accompanying our information stuff today. When you teach 9th graders, you have to have a Guinea, right? Because if you don't, it's a very long 90 minutes. And then our information concerning our organization is, we'll leave it over here at the table for you. And thank you. Thank you so much for coming. Go ahead, Arno. It's all yours.
All right. Thank you. The Norwegian people have long possessed an intense love of animals, nature, and it's always seen through their folklore and through their mythology. From the awe and fear of the powerful forces from the gods to the free spirits that roam the woods and the smaller invisible ones, their stories have often taught and entertained people for centuries. The little invisible ones were called Nisse. Originally, the Nisse were something only to be whispered about from fear. On the farms, they hissed at you in the dark and were very hairy. Actually, they might have just been the barn cat or wild imagination. But in other parts of the country, they were regarded as mysterious spirits that lived underground. They controlled forces of nature and, in turn, a farmer's fortune. Here's an example of one of the lights, and there's always little animals involved. They were believed to be Nisse that would take on the spirit of the deceased farm owner, and he'd keep an eye on his property, make sure it was cared for. He loved all the animals, but particularly favored the cats and the horses. In return, he'd live in the barn and demand to be well taken care of and given it all the best food and drink, especially around Christmas time. Even the tricksters, if he didn't get his rumagud with a large pat of butter on Christmas Eve, he was upset and he'd make trouble, and there'd be all kinds of problems. There were cases said where Nisse had become so fond of a farmer in the family that he actually had chosen to leave his own area and land in order to move or immigrate to a new country like America with the adoptive family. Now here's a Nisse feeding one of his friends. Nice. You know what kind of horse that is? Fjord. The shy, cute little Nisse in Norway were often portrayed as musical and playful. One Nisse artist, Kjell Matun, any of you heard of him? Matun? We've actually got a number of paintings of his that are hanging around our house. I'll show you one in a second here. But he portrays them as playing, skating, skiing, frolicking, a lot like little kids. Often with famous Norwegian landmark buildings in the background. They interact with people, animals, and each other in all the ways that Scandinavian people would. But they're most active during the snowy months and are often associated with good luck and bringing presents. Here's the picture we have hanging actually in our bathroom. Without the good Yule behind it, but they're the 3 rockers. So anyhow, this is classic Matun. And you can see his, where's my little thing here? See, Matun, right there. All right, anyway, here's another neat one. You know where that is? What's that back in the background? Parliament building. That's that big circle thing, right? It's in Oslo, and this is the park that's right there, and he's got all these little Nisse running around the park. Here's another one, and I believe this one's in Trondheim, but don't look into it. I don't know where that one is. But they're cute little guys. The Nisse of Norway were discovered in the mid-1800s, but it was unusual to actually see them. Generally, small kids and animals were the only beings that were able to see them. The farms and households that were lucky enough to have one benefited greatly from the help they often provided. These supernatural beings ensured the prosperity of the farm and the household. Nisse were typically about the size of a 5-year-old kid. So that's like, what, 3 feet? Usually wore gray tunics, black knickers, and leather or wooden shoes. Very much like the Dutch shoes that you've often seen. And they have rather long white beards. Occasionally Nisse would marry if he was lucky enough to find a Nisse girl who'd have him. And she would like to wear a sweater that was red or frilly white. And once in a while he even got a bath. They went to church, took walks in the forest. They loved all the animals on the farm, especially being close friends with the horses, combing and braiding their manes and tails. And the farm owners would never take those braids that the Nisse had put in, as it was bad luck. The farms that had happy Nisse always had clean barns and extra wheat in the fields. During the late 1800s, there began to be a mix of traditions. In Denmark, it was believed that the Christmas Nisse, or Yule Nisse, would bring gifts to the kids. As Nisse were quite small, they usually had to engage the help of a goat or a horse to carry the gifts. And here's a picture of a big goat hauling a sleigh. Or they could be like this fjord horse. The Yule Nisse would bring children gifts at Christmas, much like the Santa Claus figure that is portrayed in the U.S. In Sweden, these supernatural beings are called tomtars, and they become very popular at the beginning 17th century, but they also bring gifts to kids. They carry out the same chores in the household and farm as the Nisse did in Norway. In Finland, they have tomti, or tomtu, and they live many times in the sauna where it's warm, and they help out with the chores on the farm and around the house. Here's a little guy sampling some rumagut, or porridge, whatever they call it. During this time, Nisse or tomtar began appearing on Christmas cards. One artist, Jenny Nystrom, a Swedish card and book illustrator, pictured them in groups, smiling, working on chores, riding pigs, and enjoying the holiday. Now, I don't know why they would do that. Anybody who's lived on a farm and tried to harness a pig, doesn't work. They're not just a corral. It's like trying to corral cats. But anyway, these enchanting illustrations have helped to continue the stories and tradition of Yule Nisse to this day. Today, there's a belief that every household farm that has a Nisse, who is its protector. The property owner is careful to never offend them and always keep their distance. I don't know. What do they do with this? Oops, going the wrong way. You know what I forgot to put in here was that whatever. Anyway, this gives you an illustration of what some of them were like. The one on the left over there, you can see the beetles. So that's fairly recent. And then they've got the one in the middle with the birds and the other guy with his cat and so forth. So today, there are gnomes that are appearing as cute Scandinavian figures along with traditional Nisse and tomti. Now, the gnomes actually are not Scandinavian. They first appeared in Germany in the 1800s as garden and lawn ornaments. These creatures are believed to live underground near the mines and other treasures. I've got an example of a garden one sitting on the table over there. And that's kind of what they always look like. They have those cone-shaped hats And they're cute, kind of like what the Nisse are, but they're definitely not. They're gnomes. The style of the gnome changed, however, in 1937 when Disney produced Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. The style of the gnome changed again in '76 with the Dutch publication of the life and work of gnomes that translated into English the next year. Today, these German-inspired gnomes are enjoying a rise in Scandinavian popularity and a much cleaner appearance, having shed their dirty faces and debris from the earth. Here's a classic illustration of what they might have looked like coming out of a mine. And here's another one. And here's a lonely little one sitting there playing a flute. Here's a speed demon. See, in all of these, they're characteristic of typical Norwegian people doing stuff, so they embodied them or gave them the same characteristics that the people would have. From the early 1300s to the early 1900s, most Scandinavians believed in gnome-like creatures called Nisse. And they have different names in different places, even in Finland. Jolasvina, and are similar features in Iceland. But a lot of times they're doing crazy things, ski jumping over people right in the middle of the road. I've got some other ones coming up that are even worse. Some people who don't understand the concept think that Nisse or Tomti are trolls. Now, all of you have heard of trolls, the trolls that lived under the bridge and Three Billy Goats Gruff and all that kind of stuff. But if you look at the difference here, the troll is what? Ugly. Right there. Look at his teeth. He's got also a tail. Okay, well, as Nisse are cute little guys that are always hungry. Okay, and so the Scandinavian Nisse are these friendly critters unless you tick them off. Whereas the trolls just naturally, because they're naughty, do naughty things to people that displease them. Here's a picture of them fishing off a bridge. This one's in troll. This is the Mattoon print, and I think this one is fishing on a bridge in Trondheim.
Arno, if I could just interject real quick. We have some special guests in the back, so I'll let them introduce themselves.
Get the lights so you can see these pretty ladies.
Hello everyone, I am the 2023 Syttende Princess, Haley Niersen.
Hi, I'm Maya Dunham, the Westby Syttende first attendant.
Hi, I'm Vivian Croniger, Westby Syttende second attendant.
We are so happy to be here today and we thank you all for coming out.
We're happy you're here.
Very good.
Dave is one of our parade marshals for this year. So,
I'm David Crowell. I decided to parade marshal this year. I'm also the vice president of Syttende. I've been that for I don't know how many years now, over probably 12 years.
100.
And I'm also a royalty advisor. So I travel with the girls all year round. We go all over the place. We go to like 16 parades and about 32 events throughout the whole year. So yeah, we're busy. They'll be promoting Syttende next year. I hope you come back because we'll be doing this again. I'm also on the History Alive board of directors too. So I hope you all come back again because these are wonderful presentations that we put on. So they're all great. So thank you.
Thank you. little Tomti and Nisse are an echo of an ancient ancestral cult. That at least is what they think. He's sometimes seen as the farmer who cleared the forest to build his farm and who in pre-Christian times would have been buried on that farm in a mound. Now, that's a typical enterprise that farmers did, is they got buried on their land. And so this idea of a Tomti or a Nisse taking on his presence to do work and to do all these things is common. He's sometimes referred to as the mountain man. Other names, you can see him there, all connected to being part of the origin of the farm. It was thought that the Tomti or Nisse was a more generalized spirit of previous generations, and then there were references to them as they moved on. Here's a cute little one down at the train station. Here's another one right in front of, I think that's the Grand Hotel. The Swedish name Tomti was indeed derived from the term for the place of residence or area of influence, like the house lot. The Nisse is a common name in Danish, Norse, Norwegian, and in other Scandinavian dialects in southernmost Sweden. It's also a nickname for Niles. Is it? And its usage in folklore comes from expressions like Nisse dag grain or good lad. It may also be derived from other Norse things like dear relatives or from the German water sprite. Here's a picture on slopes with a speed demon going the other way. Now, I've skied a little bit in my day before my back went out. I like downhill skiing. I'm not a great cross-country skier because it's too much work. It truly is. How many of you agree to that? Yes, but downhill you can go. This guy's going the other way. The Nisse Tomti are believed to have all the personal feelings, human desires, ceremonies, and attributes that all Scandinavian people had, and did all the same things that their landowners did. They played, worked hard, loved skiing, had fun, buried their ancestors, got married, had kids, and at times they even had a naughty side, like skinny dipping and other risky activities. Now this is the skinny dipping. This is a ceremony at the church for a funeral. But there they are out in the public square. And if you notice, what do they have along with them? Food. They always are hungry. Here's another one. Now this might be a little more dangerous. Slipping off a roof into a cold lake would not be fun, but you can imagine anything. The barn-dwelling Nisse is believed to be about 3 feet tall and dressed in simple clothing like red stocking caps and knickers. The garments and implements of the Nisse were something similar to what the Scandinavian dress and tools of that era were. Here he is feeding one of the fjord horses. He had a special kinship with all the wildlife and domestic animals, birds, cats, horses, all that stuff. And he took good care of their livestock. The Nisse is preceded in another mythological creature, the Yule goat. Traditionally, the Yule goats appeared on Christmas Eve, knocking on the doors of their homes and handing out presents. The Yule goat was later replaced by the Tomti or Nisse, who brought them along with them and were similar to those of the garden gnomes. According to tradition, the Tomti or Nisse lives in the houses and barns of the farmstead and secretly acts as their guardian. If they're treated well, they protect the family and the animals from evil and misfortune, and also help do chores and farm work. Here they are having fun out in the snow. However, they are known to have a short temper, especially if they get offended. Once insulted, they will usually play tricks, steal items, or even maim or kill a livestock. The Tomte and Nisse will deliver gifts at the door at Christmas in accordance to this modern-day Swedish tradition and Norwegian traditions, like a Santa Claus. The Tomte and Nisse are also commonly seen with a pig, another popular Christmas symbol in Scandinavia, probably related to fertility or their role as guardians of the farmstead. It's common to leave behind a bowl of porridge with butter to reward them. Now this little guy, what is he missing?
Beard.
A beard. And this has become a new modern thing to have Nisse that don't have beards. Personally, I like the beards. I brought some examples you can look at later up on the front table. There's a lady, I don't know, we got these over in Iola, which is by Wapaka, something like that, and she makes them, and they're very reasonable, and they've got great beards. So, if you want one without a beard, you have to do it yourself. And here's a Nisse out there with the elk hound. And here's one that's, I don't know what he's doing. Fell down or something. The Tomte and Nisse are often imagined as small elderly men, various sizes, often with full beard, dressed in traditional farmer garb. Consisting pullover woolen tunics, belted at the waist, and knee breeches with stockings. That's still the common male dress in a lot of rural Scandinavia until the 17th century, giving an indication of when the idea of the Tomte spread. However, there are also folk tales where he's believed to be a shapeshifter, able to take the shape far larger than an adult man, and other tales where Tomte and Nisse are believed to have a single cyclops-like eye. Now here's a nice guy giving out press to a little old grandma. And your two friends on the, you know what they call those kind of sleds?
Spark.
Kick, yeah, a kick sled. You don't see them very often. I've seen them, there's a guy up in Door County who actually is from Sweden and he makes those. And he's got them, but they're kind of pricey. And there's not much there. Probably make one. Here's the Yule goat and the Nisse Santa. And here's a meeting at somebody's house. Here he's offering to the wild turkey. In modern Denmark, Nisses are often seen as beardless, wearing gray, red woolens with red caps, since Nisses are somewhat timid and are often thought to be skilled in illusion and sometimes able to make themselves invisible. One's likely to get more of a glimpse of him no matter what he looked like. Norwegian folklore states he has 4 fingers and sometimes pointed ears and eyes reflecting light and dark like those of a cat. Despite his small size, the Tomte and Nisse possessed an intense strength. He was easily offended by careless lack of respect or lazy farmers as a protector of the farm and caretaker of the livestock, and his retribution for bad practices ranged from small pranks like a hard strike to the ear. Any of you remember growing up and having somebody flick your ear, or, you know, a little whap? That was Nisse. That was probably your grandma. But I had that happen. But anyhow, sometimes they had more severe punishment, like killing off livestock or ruining a farmer's fortune, which we hope didn't happen very often. Observance of traditions was thought important to the Tomte and Nisse, as he did not like changes in things. He was easily offended by rudeness, farm workers swearing, urinating in the barns, not treating the creatures well, would all result in a sound thrashing by the Tomte and Nisse. Nisse makes off here in this picture with some of the farmer's hay, as payback for running a sloppy farm and not giving him porridge. If anybody spilled anything on the floor in the house, it was considered proper to shout a warning to the Tomte below. An angry Tomte, or Nisse, is features in the popular children's book by Swedish author Selma Lagerlöf, which basically was Niall's wonderful journey through Sweden. In that book, a Tomte turns the naughty boy Niles into a Tomte, or a Nisse, and he travels across Sweden on the back of a goose. All owners of a homestead are required to please the Tomte spirit with gifts, particularly the porridge at Christmas time. If he didn't leave any, he would engage in mischief such as tying cows' tails together, turning objects upside down, breaking things. The Tomte also liked the porridge with a pat of butter. And there was a story often told of a young farmer who put the butter underneath the porridge instead of on top. When the Tomte at the homestead found that the butter was missing, he was filled with rage, killed the cow, was resting in the barn, but then he eventually became hungry and went back to the porridge and ate it. When he found the butter on the bottom of the bowl, he was full of grief and sorrow for what he'd done that was so unfair to the farmer. And he hurried around to search the lands for another farmer with an identical cow and replace the former one. And there are a lot of stories that take off from this, of something that happened. They try to re-find a cat that's similar, or a dog, or another animal to replace the one that was missing. Another tale, a Norwegian maid decided to eat the porridge herself and ended up severely beaten by the Nisse. The farmer swore at her, said, "You've eaten the porridge for the Nisse. Then you have to dance with him and beg for his forgiveness." The farmer found her nearly lifeless body the morning after. The Nisse is also connected to farm animals, which we mentioned before, most generally the horse. But anyhow, he loves taking care of them and braiding them and all this kind of stuff. Tomte was in ancient time believed to be the soul of the first inhabitor of the farm. He who cleared the house lot. He had his dwellings in the burial mounds on the farm, and always gave porridge to the Tomte at Christmas time. He was not a popular figure, particularly during and after Christianization of Scandinavia. Like most creatures of folklore, he would be seen probably as heathen, somewhat naughty pre-Christian time, or demonized, connected to the devil. Here he's the little guy eating out in the barn. Farmers believing in the house Tomte could be seen as worshiping false gods or demons. And for any of you who've studied gods and mythology and all of this kind of stuff, when Christianity came to Scandinavian countries in the 1300s, and eventually grew stronger and stronger and stronger in the 16th and 17th centuries, any of this kind of stuff of cultish worship was very, very negative. So anyhow, the whole concept of these little guys started out probably on the wrong foot, but then it came down to, they're cute little guys and they, do things for you and keep you in good spirits and help out and all of that. The belief in the Nisse tendency to bring riches to the farm with his unseen work could also be dragged into conflicts between neighbors. If one farmer was doing better than the other one, they might think, oh, his Tomte or his Nisse is doing ungodly work and stealing from the neighbors, and the rumors would be circulated and would be damaging for that farmer who found himself accused of these heretical acts. kind of like witchcraft, which is kind of weird, but a lot of this is weird. There you go. All right, you've seen this picture, but I like it, so I put it in again. And they were very social and very, they loved to party, which who doesn't? These delightful little Nisse beings were quite friendly and social. They partied and frolicked with other ones, just like the Norwegian people do. Besides liking all the animals, they especially liked birds and cats and the horses and the moose. Some synonyms for the tomties, and you can see them there. They've got all kinds of stuff for yard dwellers and yard wardens and good farmers and barn gnomes and so forth. The tomty in Nisse could also take a ship for his home, and then they were known by the tomty. Like this. Those you don't see very often, but I just thought I'd throw it in there. There he is with his moose. And there they are at the local motorcycle hangout. And here they are on a fishing trawler. You can tell what year Mattoon made this thing. Got it on the boat with a dog on the roof. In other European folklore, there are many beings similar to the tomty and Nisse, such as the Scots idea, and the English brownie, and the English Northumbrian English hob, the German gnomes, or the Russians domovli. The Finnish word was tomtu. The tomty or Nisse are also one of the more familiar creatures in folklore, and he's appeared in many works of Scandinavian literature. With the Romanticism and collection of folklore during the 19th century, the Nisse could gain popularity, and in English editions of the fairy tales by H.C. Andersen, the word Nisse was translated as goblin, which isn't really very accurate. And oftentimes when we think of goblins, we think of, ghosts and bad, creatures, and these really weren't like that. There he is out snowshoeing. In the 1840s, the farm's Nisse became the bearer of the Christmas presents in Denmark and were then called Yule Nisse. In 1881, the Swedish magazine, My Illustrated Tidning, showed tomty that alone was awakened in a cold Christmas night, pondering the mysteries of life and death. His poem featured the first painting by Jenny Nyström of this traditional Swedish character, where she turned the white, bearded, red-capped figure associated with Christmas ever since. And that's kind of, where it came from in Denmark. Shortly afterwards, Christmas traditions, as well as the New Danish tradition, showed them in a lot of different things. They were on Christmas cards, doing all kinds of stuff. Here's a classic one where they're just, standing in the middle of a snow-covered forest. Gradually, commercialism has made him look more and more like the American Santa Claus. But the Swedish Yule tomty, the Norwegian Yule Nisse, and the Danish Yule Man, along with the Finnish ones, are still called the Yule goats. Although his animal features have disappeared, still his features and the things he does are rooted in that local culture. He doesn't live on the North Pole, and perhaps in the forest nearby. And in Denmark he lives in Greenland, and in Finland he lives in Lapland. And I lost it. Where'd you go? Nope. But he's often pictured on Christmas cards and garden decorations as the little man from Jenny Nyström's imagination, often with the horse and the cat, or riding on a goat or a sled pulled by a goat. The traditional word tomty was also in this little children's story about Hedgie. Any of you ever seen the Hedgie stories? No, well, they're around. They're a little hedgehog by Jan Brett. Yeah, kind of cute. Some stories tell how the Nisse could drive people mad or bite them. The bite from the Nisse was believed to be poisonous, and otherworld healings were required. As the story goes, the girl who was bitten withered and died before help could arrive. The Tomtar or Nisse often appeared in Christmas TV series and other modern fiction. In some versions, the Tomtar were portrayed as very small, while in others they were human-sized. They usually exist hidden from humans and were often able to use magic. Here they are bringing gifts. Many cases where the Nisse had become so fond of the farmer that they actually moved. Over the years, Nisse have played an important role in helping Norwegians regain their pride. During World War II, those red knit caps that they're so famous for wearing became the national symbol for patriotism. Today, they are not only characters full of Norway's heritage, but have become irresistible little people with red pointed hats. The popular children's holiday game or whatever story about the elf on the shelf. How many have heard of the elf on the shelf? Yeah, my daughter does that all the time with her kids, and they love it. She hides them in trees and up on the lamps and, all those things. It has in its concept the idea of the smallness of who hides, and the kids must find it every day. There's a picture of one. There he is cuddling in a Kleenex box. And here's something. If you ever want to do something with marshmallows and toothpicks, you can get those little hats down at the dollar store or someplace for party favors and make a little snowman with your kids or grandkids. And have the elf on the shelf. Eat them. Anyway, here's some pictures they do. They're all over the place, partying, having fun. I like this one particularly, because you know who that is? That's a Sami. Sami, the indigenous people in Norway. Right there. You can tell by the colorful costume. So anyhow, you enjoyed it?
Perfect.